let's simplify this. You've got chronic pain for 10 years. Here's what's going on. The brain is perceiving danger and it's been keeping it going for all these years. People can kind of create their own fears. What if I'm not good enough to do this? What if I can't implement this stuff? I'm too scared. Pain's been here for too long. Pain's too intense, right? I've always been anxious my whole life. And how am I supposed to get better? How am I supposed to reduce the fear when I've been anxious my whole life? And they've got all these stories why they can't implement something as simple as teach your brain you're okay. So sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And yes, there is a journey there. You know, I tell people all the time, I can't do it for you. All I can do is point at the guideposts and say, turn left here, turn right there. This is what you do. Stay on the main road. Don't go off into the dirt roads through the jungle, right? And everybody's got to find their way through this. And it's incredible to see the realizations. But at a certain point in time, everybody who gets better has that moment where they go, you know, I still have symptoms, but I don't care anymore.
Episode 26 on the Holocene podcast, and today we have Dan from Pain Free You. Dan has been helping and guiding people from chronic pain for a very long time. He first came across Dr. John Sarno, I think a decade or so ago, where he actually reversed his own chronic back pain, which led him on a journey of sort of deeper understanding of the mind-body connection. Dan has been working with clients all around the world and helping and assisting them with all sorts of symptoms, which we go into in this interview. Anything from chronic pain to dizziness, migraines, and you name it. In this show, we talk a lot about John Sarno and his findings. And Dan has a really simplified message that I think is incredibly valuable. So I hope you get a lot of value out of this. He has a way about him where he can just simplify and stick to the point. This information, when you get into it, it can be complex, and it is complex to some degree, but Dan cuts through all of that and just keeps reaffirming the same message. So I hope that you like the show. I hope there's a lot of value there. I'm sure there is. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. It just helps to spread the information far and wide. And I hope that you enjoy the show, and I'll see you on the other side. So, Dan, I really appreciate you coming on. I've been following your stuff for a good few years now, and I've got to say, how chilled you come across in your videos is infectious. I'm guessing you've not always been that way if you're somebody that has suffered with TMS, albeit some years ago.
Well, I wouldn't say that's the case. No, I was always the happy kid. My mom still tells me to this day that I was the happy kid who'd sit in the playpen at a year old and just playing with my toys and smiling, and everything was good. No, I was a pretty easygoing person all throughout my life. So it wasn't that I was an overly anxious type of kid. Obviously, I had normal upbringing. So there's always, the stress, the bullies, the schoolwork, all that kind of stuff, but nothing out of the ordinary.
Yeah. I think when I look at the John Sarno stuff, which hopefully we'll get into in some detail, he talks about the type A character, which is definitely me. And it was when I first listened to Healing Back Pain, it was like he was describing me as a person. So I'm quite interested in understanding kind of how you've fell into this this world, because what I was understanding is it tends to be people like me that maybe are a bit, the category of like perfectionist or overthinking, or can sometimes become a little bit anxious, which, to be honest with you, I never actually thought I was anxious at all until someone told me I was, which was quite interesting to go, near on 33 years, and somebody said something to me and I was like, wow, I never really thought about it that way. And I didn't really think I was an emotional person. I was just quite good at covering my emotions, which, you know,
that fits in with Sarno's theories of repressed emotions.
Yeah. And since sort of uncovering all of this, I've actually realized I'm a very emotional person. And I'm looking back over 33 years and thinking, what did I do before? So in terms of your situation, did you mind just kind of going briefly into what sort of led you to what it is that you do now?
Yeah, I can give you a little bit of background and kind of touch on some of the history of Dr. Sarno as well, because some of your viewers may have never heard of him or may have never heard of this mind-body reason for symptoms. So I was in my early 30s, bent over to put on my underwear, and all of a sudden my back just spasmed and major pain, dropped to my knee, and that started 13 long years worth of, pain, on, off, on, not quite off, lower, higher, big flare-ups, all sorts of problems for 13 years. My body got all sorts of jacked up and crooked from compensating for the pain for all those years. I heard about this guy, Dr. John Sarno, who, been writing books since the 80s and 90s, and has really helped countless millions of people around the globe with his work and his concepts. And what Sarno figured is the brain can create pain to protect us. And in his world, it was protecting us from repressed emotions that were kind of bubbling up towards the surface. The brain perceived the emotions as dangerous, and so the brain turned on pain to, in his world, distract us from those emotions, because we were taught as kids those emotions are not very cool. They're not safe. They're not appropriate. They're not acceptable, for a lot of reasons. My world, I guess in my early 30s, I had some reasons to be angry. Young child, money problems, living in a rental. The marriage was good, but, had its challenges. Living in a rental, I think I said that, but basically I'm sitting around going, how did I get here? This isn't the life I kind of thought I'd be living. I had been reading like business books, success books since I was 18, and here I am in my early 30s going, oh, I got a kid, I'm broke, long drive to the work, stressful job. I'm going, how did I get here? So I had some reasons to be angry, but because I was always the cool, chill guy growing up, I'm not going to get angry. So the anger was kind of pushed aside. The backstory to that is my dad was a very angry guy. And I can remember as a young kid going, I'm never going to be like him. So what did I do with the anger? So that may have been part of the reason why I started to have back pain, is the fit perfectly well into Sarno's theory of repressed emotions, the repressed anger built up, the pain was created. But I also believe significantly that what started the pain may have nothing to do with why it keeps going. Right. And I've since, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask, was you consciously aware of what was causing the anger during this period, or was it only later down the line when you started to piece it together that you?
Yeah, I mean, it's, in hindsight, knowing what I know now, I can look back and go, okay, so there was frustrations, there was anger, and I think a big question was, how did I get here? This isn't what I signed up for. I didn't expect to be a broke 30-something-year-old living in a rental with a stressful job and an okay marriage.
That's one of the categories Sarno talks about in his the healing prescription.
Yeah, so what I ended up doing was I bounced back and forth. I found out about this Dr. Sarno. I got better, but then the pain came back. I got better, it came back, got better, on and off for the next 12 years. So people are saying, well, that doesn't sound too convincing. Doesn't seem like it works very well. But it did, and it does. It just took me a while to get it dialed in to the point where I'm no longer afraid of symptoms. And that's where I am now. But I've been studying this stuff for 25 years. Been doing coaching for about 7, maybe 8 years. Excuse me. Been doing daily videos on YouTube, Facebook for just about 5 years daily, and interacting with thousands of people as coaching clients and probably tens of thousands of people through the internet, YouTube, Facebook, with comments and, exchanges online. And so I've learned more in the past 5 years of publishing these daily videos than I learned in the prior 20 paying attention to this stuff. I've got every book, every mind body, TMS book, psychology books, neuroscience, all, pain books. I've got all those books and I've read them all, but I really think that interacting with as many people as I do has allowed me to really get extremely certain about what's causing symptoms, and more importantly, what to do about it to get rid of them. And if they come back, how to deal with that so they don't become chronic again. So it's been a heck of a journey, but it's a really, really cool, I'll say, concept, information, reality. This isn't just theory. I mean, this stuff actually works. Tons of people are getting better, eliminating years or decades worth of pain. I had 13 years. I've been pain-free, chronic pain-free, for the past 14. So.
Yeah, I think if you look at modern day science, it's all about the double blind or the epidemiological studies. And if you talk about your own personal experience, it's always, that's anecdotal. And I think anecdotes are discredited, but I feel that when you see this for yourself with your own eyes, that's a whole new level of understanding. And I think that's what comes across when you talk in your daily videos and in your interviews. It's this kind of calm, level-headed certainty of, I know, and like you said, you can read the book 100 times, but until you've actually seen that yourself. So I'm not surprised by what you're saying at all. And it radiates. When you talk, it's like, this is a man who has seen it. And I think that people trust that as well.
I've lived it, and I've seen it in others. And so, one of my catchphrases is, when I publish a success story, I'm like, this stuff works, folks.
Yeah.
And I currently have like 72 and counting full-length interview success stories. Anecdotal, sure, but it's a wealth of anecdotal evidence. These concepts work. And I've got a text file on my computer that's, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people's comments from YouTube and Facebook going, oh my goodness, Dan, your work has saved my life. I'm doing so much better. This was the key to turning the corner and finally getting better. I've been doing this stuff for years. I've been reading Sarno for years, doing all sorts of mind-body concepts for years, but the way you explain it really helped me. And so, I believe I've never been more certain as to the cause and the solution for chronic pain and also other chronic ailments. It doesn't have to be just pain. There's all sorts of chronic conditions that can be caused by a brain perceiving danger.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you so you had the back pain, which led you to Dr. Sarno, and then you've had pain on and off, and you said it started in the lower, then it was in the middle of the back, and up in the back.
No, mostly lower back. Sometimes it would be on the right, sometimes on the left. I would have sciatica going down one or the other or both legs.
I was going to ask you that. Did you find that as you cured one thing, it popped up somewhere else, and it was just something different and random? And
for me, a lot of that 13 years was it kept on popping up in the same place over and over and over again.
Okay. But you mentioned the sciatica as well. That seems to be quite a common.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a lot of people with back pain have the pain radiating down one or the other or both legs. I mean, sciatica is the medical term for it, but it was truly just mind-body pain radiating down a leg. It wasn't anything to do specifically with a nerve that was impacted negatively.
Yeah. It's strange how the body tends to pick the path of least resistance. So I'll give you an example. I mentioned before the call, I've been getting a tingle down my right leg. I had it a few years ago. It was nowhere near like it is now. And it came and went. I saw an osteopath and he's telling me it's all this in the spine and it's all that. your body's, you know, slightly out, and he'd twist me around, and it would kind of feel different, but it'd come back. And I got into Sarno, and it sort of melted away. And I actually had experiences where I talked it away in a specific moment, which is, you know, how do you explain that one off? And recently, like, I'm getting married, as I said, next week. There's a lot going on. The stage I'm at in terms of the wedding is akin to when you're on the motorway going on holiday, and all you're thinking is, did I leave the oven on? Did I leave the key in the door? Did I lock the door? You're almost like you need to go to the woods for a long walk just to let it all settle, and things will pop into your mind. Did we pay that person? Is that person going to turn up? Did we do this? So it's like, it's chaotic in my mind, right? I know it's all going to work out, but subconsciously something's going on. And anyway, I'm into Thai boxing. So I practice in Muay Thai. And one of the issues I've always had is opening up my hips, right? So my hip flexors are tight. And I've started to go to this new club, and they're very hot on high kicks. They're the way they stretch and the way they use their, you know, the form in terms of the kicks is really good. But I felt a lot of strain on my hip flexors. And that's around about the time where I'm opening that up is when this leg's been going mental. And I went to the osteopath again, just to have a little check over, just to be sure. And I talked to him about Muay Thai, and he's like, yeah, hip flexor, what's happening is the nerve and it's twisting and blah, blah, blah. And I just find it quite funny, but it's come in a place that is explainable because of an actual situation. Like, the mind knows how to trick you into believing it. Does that make sense? So you often see it is a specific location based in a specific...
but I would take a different angle. I don't believe the brain is trying to trick us into anything. The brain's primary responsibility since the moment we were conceived until the moment we eventually pass away is safety and survival. Our brain doesn't know how to work against us. Our brain doesn't have an ulterior motive to mess with us or trick us. And the concept which I've introduced is not that it's all about repressed emotions, but it's about perceived danger. So there can be any number of perceived dangers that can cause symptoms. Now, in your case, tight hip flexors, doing all these stretches and kicks, your brain perceived danger in that location. It's probably why it picked that location. Again, you know, had you been doing whatever pull-ups, you may have perceived danger in your shoulders, or your lats, you know, or your wrists, or whatever. So I don't think the brain is working against us. Our brain is our best friend. It's always doing its best to protect us. And I think chronic pain is simply a mistake. The brain perceives danger, and then the fear and the attention we give to it, along with the medicalization we get from going to 18 different doctors and imaging studies and everything else, all of a sudden we walk around feeling like I'm broken. I've seen it on the x-ray or the MRI. And, you know, the doctor told me this, and that, and I'm going to be in pain for the rest of my life. Fear, broken. And all of a sudden the brain says, okay, we're going to keep the pain going so you don't overuse that body part. So pain is a warning signal to go, hey, don't do that. Don't do that high kick. What are you doing? Right?
Yeah, it's quite an unnatural move, I guess.
Well, regardless, I mean, athletes do that move all the time, so there's no reason why you couldn't. I'm not convinced you injured that, twisted something, the nerve and this and that. That's just the mainstream medicine belief or explanation as to why you hurt. But why did it start coming up a month before a wedding?
Yeah,
right.
So then what I think is happening is you start to, and you said before, like, perceived danger, pain. So you start to, like, attach fear or doubt or almost like too much attention to this specific thing. And then what's happening is, like, the brain is like a recording repetitive mechanism, and then it starts to, you know, create maybe some neuro pathway where it's now hyper alert to that specific symptom. Is that sort of what's happening here? It's because you're almost creating this, I don't know, this repetitive sort of thing that's going on mixed with emotions or fear or...
So fear and attention are the two things that can make a single symptom chronic or persistent, right? There are people who have told stories of coming out of, let's say, a knee operation, and they were very surprised at the amount of pain post-surgery. And they were convinced the doctor messed it up. The doctor messed it up. Oh my goodness, I can't believe how much it hurts. The doctor must have messed it up. More MRIs, more x-rays, everything seems fine. 3 years later, they're still hurting, and they're still telling the story that the doctor screwed up the surgery. But yet they've gone to 6 knee specialists, and every single one of them goes, your knee's fine. There's nothing here that would indicate the amount of pain you're in. So we can have chronic pain long after whatever injury or surgery has healed. So it's the perception of danger that this person struggled with. If they got to walk the steps, oh no, they're terrified. Yeah. And they're practically crying going up the stairs, holding on to the handrail, right? So it's the perception of danger. It can be the initial perception of danger, or it can be ongoing perception of danger that keeps it going. In my case, for whatever reason, I had a lot of stress going on in my life, bunch of stuff happening. I bent over, but guess what my brain learned in that moment? Bending over is dangerous. Don't do that again. So as I dealt with months worth of pain before it finally subsided, I became very fearful of bending over. And throughout the 13 years, almost all of my acute onsets when the pain came back hard were when I was bending over to do this, do that, pick something up, whatever it may be. My brain learned that bending over is dangerous, which it really isn't. It's just, it connected. That's when it started. That's what happened. Now I'm fearful of it. Now I avoid bending over. So my avoidance is actually confirming the brain's perception bending over is dangerous because look, Dan's afraid to bend over. And so it perpetuates it. It can go on for years or decades. So the key is teaching the brain that we're actually not in danger. And there are assessments that you can kind of look at your pain or symptoms and go, how does it behave? Is it behaving like a structural problem, which should be really consistent? Or are there other anomalies about the way the symptoms are behaving, which really points to the brain is creating it based on the perception of danger? So there's, assessments that are very good at helping people figure out, is it organic, structural, or is it, the brain perceiving danger? So that's how we kind of help people assess and figure out what's going on with them. And then afterwards, it's a matter of how do we teach the brain that this perceived danger is based on misinformation and fear. Yeah. I told my own brain that my back was fine. And guess what? At 58, I feel way better than I did in my 30s.
Do you feel that until, say it is TMS, right? Because obviously you've got to rule off, there are other things that exist. Let's say you've gone through that and you've not found any specific, life-threatening situation. Maybe there's a small structural abnormality, but as Dr. Sarno said, he's pulled people off the street that had worse than you, that had no pain. Do you feel until they come across the TMS stuff, normally people are like going through some sort of investigative process, trying to figure out what it is? Do you feel like that process is just adding fuel to the fire in some cases and just creating this whole thing that's building and building and building?
Well, it certainly can, depending upon what is found on imaging studies and what the doctors say. Because the doctors will be like, look at the MRI. This is the problem. Okay, doc, what do we do about it? Well, it's not severe enough to do surgery, so just get used to it. What? Oh, it'll probably get worse and worse over time, and then maybe at some point in the future you'll need surgery. Yeah. It's like this prognosis and prediction of doom and gloom for your life. And people walk out of doctor's offices almost terrified sometimes of, oh no. But yet many of them can't even point to an actual injury. There was no car crash, they didn't fall off a roof, nothing bad happened. Now all of a sudden they've got a herniated disc that they don't know when they got it or how they got it. Now all of a sudden they're being told they're going to be, impacted for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
like you said, normal abnormalities.
Yeah.
Most, not most, a lot of people have them. At my age, I'm almost 60. 2/3 of people with no back pain at all have bulging and herniated discs. 2/3 of people with no back pain, bulging and herniated discs. So isn't that kind of proof that bulging and herniated discs don't cause pain? But a person with pain who finds a bulging and herniated disc, the doctor goes, that's it. Okay, prove that that's causing the pain. They can't. All they can prove is that that's what's shown on the image.
Yeah.
Which is also why a lot of surgeries don't work. They're not successful. I mean, Tiger Woods had 5 surgeries.
Yeah. When I started looking at the TMS stuff, I looked at Tiger Woods and I thought that guy has had so much pressure from a young age. Sure. And it's eating him alive. You can see, I mean, he had a period in his life where it was falling apart, and it just so happened around then his knee's gone, his back's gone, you know, and you got, I don't know, bodybuilders, professional bodybuilders lifting hundreds of kilograms over their heads, and their discs are probably all over the place, but they've got no back pain. It just,
I mean, Tiger's an interesting story. His symptoms really came about very soon after his dad passed away. And then, for anybody who's aware, his personal life crumbled, his marriage crumbled, and a lot of embarrassing things going on. We won't get deep into it, but that's kind of when all of the pain started. And because Tiger's got money to pay the best doctors in the world, they were the ones going, well, you've got this little thing on the MRI. We're going to fix that. Yeah. 5 surgeries later,
he's institutionalized at that point, and it's the next thing. And you get it often with so in England we watch the Premier League, so football we call it here, you lot call it soccer for some reason, but football, right? Yep. And you get some players, one in particular, Jack Wilshere, he played for Arsenal, young player, 16, 17, everyone's saying he's going to be the next thing, you know, best thing. Had an unbelievable Champions League game against Barcelona, the best team in the world. Everything was going with this guy. And then all of a sudden, injury after injury after injury. And you look at that and you're like, I mean, what are the chances? And the injury, the one that finished him off was a repetitive situation in his knee, I think it was. But it's always something. It's one injury after another after another.
Yeah. Sports are a different animal, though, because some of it could be TMS, but also, you know, football, American football, rugby. These are very impact-heavy sports. And so it's very possible that some of these are legitimate injuries.
Yeah.
So it's tough to say in those circumstances. You'd have to evaluate them on a case-by-case basis. But it
does make you think, though, especially with some, you know, some of the pressures that these guys are under. But yeah, I think the Tiger Woods one is really interesting when you're sort of been down this path. So I was going to ask as well. So you've seen for was it 7 years? Is it now you've been seeing?
I've been doing coaching for about 7 years. That mostly picked up once I started doing my daily videos, because prior to that, nobody knew who I was, and I was picking up clients here and there. But things got really busy about a year after starting to do these daily videos. About 2.5 years into doing the daily videos, I couldn't keep up with the one-on-one coaching requests, so I formed a group coaching program. So now I run Zoom calls and do coaching on a group level, and that seems to be going very well. That way I can help a lot more people, because I would never be able to help that many folks if I was only doing one-on-one calls. There's only so many hours a day.
Okay, that leads me to my next question. Well, kind of 2 questions here.
Sure.
Have you seen multiple people that have multiple issues? So it could be a neck pain, and then they get vertigo, and they get headaches, and sometimes they get this and then that, and it moves and jumps around. And the other question I was going to ask is, what are the kind of most common things that you're seeing across the board that maybe that you'd look at and go, I can, you know, I've seen this before, chances are it's TMS, do my test and we'll kind of, you know, confirm that?
So first of all, there are people with multiple symptoms in multiple body parts and different types of symptoms. Some people might have back pain and digestive issues and migraines, all three, and it's all TMS. It's all perceived danger creating all that stuff.
Do you normally get one, then the other, and then it moves to the next, or do these people sometimes have all?
Sometimes people have a cascade of symptoms very quickly. Others will start with one, and the more afraid they get, sometimes they'll add another one and pick up another one. And sometimes they'll hear a story of, wow, somebody with this had that, and now they're worried about getting that. And then next thing you know, they get that thing too. So symptoms can be kind of contagious by hearing about it, which is it's very common. So yeah, there are many people with many symptoms. I was fortunate. I really had one symptom that was through most of it, but it wasn't a fun symptom. Pretty disabling at times. The other question you had is there a most common thing?
Or what are the most common things that you normally come across?
Oh, I mean, all sorts of pains. Can be headaches, migraines, digestive pains, digestive disorders, IBS, pelvic pains, facial pains, trigeminal neuralgia, neck pain, throat pain, feeling of closing throat, but it's not really closing. It doesn't actually shut down, but sensations there, wrist pain. In the years gone by, it used to be a lot of people being told they had tendonitis or carpal tunnel, repetitive strain injuries. There's almost no ends to it. There are autoimmune conditions that are very much TMS related. And let me clarify that. When we're in the fight or flight response, the stress response, two things are suppressed, digestion and the immune system, which can allow for immune system related things to start happening.
Yeah.
People with reflux could be a stress issue. Could be any number of things. So generally, I don't rule anything out as not being TMS or created by perceived danger. There are certain things that clearly life-threatening, heart attacks, strokes, cancers, major infections. Go see your doctor. Let's rule out life-threatening stuff. I would never say that everything's TMS, and some people do, but I would never. I would say, let's rule out the life-threatening, then let's start to do the assessments to rule in this mind-body concept. Yeah. And we start to do the analysis like, well, what started it? Is there any physical precipitation or injury or trauma to the body? Okay, but you just started hurting. So how did you injure yourself? A lot of people go, oh, back to my injury. And I'm like, tell me about the injury. Well, it started this time. And I was like, well, how'd you injure it? I don't know, it just started hurting. That's not how injuries work. Injuries, if somebody punches you in the face, it hurts. That's an injury, right? But pain that started in your back for no reason because you were, at work or, got up from the bed too quick, that's not an injury. We're not that frail and easily broken. So rule out the life-threatening, folks, and then let's rule in this mind-body stuff. The assessments are pretty well proven, not created by me. The questions are very much coming, coming from medical doctors who have been working, some originally alongside Sarno, trained by him, and then carrying on his work. Sarno passed away, I don't know when, early 2000s, don't know the date, but there's a lot of real legit medical doctors who are carrying on this work, and they're helping to figure out, well, if the symptom behaves like this, then it's mind-body, it's TMS. It's perceived danger creating it, because structural pain would behave completely different. So, excuse me, I don't really rule anybody out and say, nope. I say, maybe, let's see. And then we look at it.
Do you notice any trends in demographics? Like, say, when you were 30, I think you said it was around your 30s, the weight of the world on your shoulders, rented accommodation, not really where you wanted to be in your life at that point, back pain.
So there is definitely a curve. Down here is the younger ages, as we get a little bit older, middle ages, the age of responsibility, they kind of call it. People start getting towards retirement and settling down. Kids are grown, all that kind of stuff. So there is a curve that way.
Yeah.
And less young kids have it than middle-aged people have it. It's probably about 60-40 women to men, but that's just who I'm seeing in my audience on YouTube and in my group. But that may also be partially due to the, societal things where people are saying to men, tough it out, quit complaining, just deal with it. And I think there's a certain percentage of men who just deal with it. I mean, how many people have an uncle who's had back pain their whole life and they just worked their whole life and they came home and, sitting on the couch and, so I think just as many men get it as women. I think my audience shows up a little bit heavier women, not heavy women, but more women than men. I didn't mean to say it that way, but yeah, so it seems like more women get it, but I'm not convinced of that fact because I got plenty of guys in my group coaching. I've coached plenty of guys, and even things that might be traditionally perceived as a woman thing, there's plenty of men with pelvic pain, bladder issues, frequency, urgency, with urination, things like that. There's plenty of men with that. So it's not a woman thing. It's a human thing. So there's all sorts of symptoms.
Do you get a lot of dizziness and vertigo in your clientele?
I certainly do see that. I think it's a little trickier because, one of the concepts that I teach is convey safety to yourself and to your brain. And if somebody's really dizzy, they're saying, how can I be safe? I might fall over, smack my head, right? And so it's a little more challenging, but yes, I've seen it. And yes, people are getting better from that.
I see the vertigo situation slightly differently now than what I did. At first I was terrified, as you can imagine. Sure. But now I see it as, I mean, what is vertigo? When it floors you, what is it? It's your body's taking you to bed on your back in the safest position it knows.
Sure.
So essentially, when life is becoming too much, that tends to be when I get it. I've learned how to manage the period in between, the attacks. Essentially, during the COVID times, I was getting it every 4 to 5 months. It was terrifying. Whereas the last time I had it was actually a month ago, but before that was nearly 2 years, which is incredible. I did a lot of work in between, which I'd like to go into with you shortly, if possible.
Please.
But I managed it. And when I last had it, I was no longer freaking out because I'm like, I've gone 2 years without it. I'm pretty sure I'm not dying. All of the things that you freak out about when it first happens, I'm like, I've had 2 years of like living normally. I'm pretty sure if it was a real problem, I would have known. And I sort of laid in bed and it was 3 days, but I needed it. And I feel like my body was like, right, we've had enough. And it actually started on a podcast. I was interviewing a doctor in America, and I mentioned that I haven't had vertigo in nearly 2 years. And after that call, I sat there, I was eating my dinner, and I went like that, and the room wobbled, and I thought, oh no. And as the evening went on, it got worse and worse. By bedtime, if I turned my head that way, the room's wobbling. Next morning, I couldn't get out of bed. So it's almost like I talked it into existence. I got cocky. So I haven't had it in 2 years.
Not necessarily. I mean, you didn't get cocky. The brain was reminded subconsciously of this thing called vertigo. And it was like, oh, you mean this? Here you go.
There you go.
Right.
You need 3 days.
Don't blame yourself for that. It's funny. I have a very mild ringing in my ear. It's called tinnitus.
Yeah.
98% of the time, I don't even notice it. In my opinion, if I'm not noticing it, it doesn't exist, right? Because it's not present. Anytime somebody mentions that word or asks me a question about tinnitus, I hear it. And just your story about how you felt like you thought vertigo into existence that day after the podcast, I started to hear it. But for the first however long, 40 minutes of the podcast, 30 minutes of the podcast, I wasn't hearing it. And I don't hear it the majority of the day. And it's only when that topic comes up that my brain goes, oh, wait, what, that? And so it's really interesting how the brain, the subconscious, the nervous system, it all works. But it never becomes significant. It never becomes loud or disruptive because I give it zero fear, zero attention.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, wow, look at that. There we go.
I think I just did the heart thing. Heart emojis. Here we go. Hey, Stripe is weird.
Okay, so when I said that I went 2 years without the vertigo, so I went down all sorts of rabbit holes, and I think a lot of things I did help, and I think there's a lot of credit in the things that I was looking into. And I've interviewed guests before you on this show that have covered most of the topics that I went over in my search for healing, essentially. But then I've come back around to TMS again. So TMS, you could maybe say it's an overactive central nervous system, or triggered, or fight or flight, or hyper alert or vigilant central nervous system. And when you look into certain environmental factors, toxins, things like mercury, black mold is another one, could be a load of factors. Blue light, as we spoke about, you got your blue light blockers on. These things can, like fat soluble toxins, can situate themselves on the central nervous system, heightening anxiety and keeping you ticking over slightly in fight or flight. So essentially you're in a heightened state constantly. And I feel like probably the low hanging fruit in this situation is to deal with the TMS aspect, calm yourself down, realize that you're not damaged, you're not broken, and your body's trying to help, but maybe firing the wrong signals or whatnot. But I also looked into certain things that I've done over the years, in terms of having exposure to different things that have caused anxieties or stress, or things like mercury in the vaccine I had. I found the actual vaccine I had, and it had a form of mercury in it. I lived in a moldy environment for a period, and I didn't even realize. And you look into that, and all the symptoms I had, they're all linked as well. So I did a lot of like detoxing and looking at my lymph fluid and drainage and all of this, as well as doing the daily 12 reminders and things like that. Do you recommend these things as well, or do you think that could get people spiraling into different categories of worry as well?
Well, I don't, because I see tons of success without sending people down the biohacking rabbit hole.
Okay.
Right. I mean, I wear these because they help keep my circadian clock going, and I sleep better at night, and I need reading glasses, so I may as well have them block the blue light from the devices. But I don't think for a minute that this prevents TMS or chronic pain. Not for a minute. It has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with it. So you can absolutely be dragged into rabbit holes with naturopaths, alternative medicines, biohackers, detox people. I'm much more along the lines of, first of all, you made a comment about a hypersensitive or dysregulated nervous system. I think our nervous system and brain is working perfectly. I don't think it's dysregulated at all. Just operating on misinformation and fear. Misinformation meaning, oh, Dan, you got a bad back. No, I didn't. But the brain thought I did, and it was always protecting me by making it hurt. In your case, I don't think there was any mechanical or organic cause of your vertigo. I think the brain just said, life's spinning a little bit too fast, so let's spin it and make sure he goes to lay down for a few days. I don't look deep into physiological, organic causes, because I've seen plenty of people stop, throw away all their supplements, all their medications, they taper off of them, and they focus 100% on this mind-body stuff and get better.
Yeah.
I haven't heard people say, when I fixed my B12 deficiency, I got better and my chronic pain went away. I haven't heard that. I
Yeah.
have heard that with a lot of different things. And so the last thing I want to do is create more fear and hypervigilance surrounding micromanaging our entire human biome to make sure that everything is perfectly balanced, because frankly, nobody is.
Yeah.
And you want proof of that, go look at, a 300-pound person who's got no chronic issues at all. They're heavy, but they don't have chronic pain. Digestion seems to be okay, right? They don't have headaches. They don't have neck pain. They don't have any of this stuff. They're just big. That means that the body is incredibly capable of dealing with a lot of the toxins in the food and the beverages and all that stuff. I just believe the human body is incredibly resilient and knows how to survive. That's its primary job.
Mm. Good.
And there are perfectly healthy people that are micromanaging their entire life down to eating 3 foods because of something that showed on a blood test and food sensitivity test and all this stuff. I think we can drive ourselves crazy with that stuff, and that just perpetuates one thing: the brain's perception of danger, which means if you're afraid of eating the food, it's probably not going to sit too well with you when you eat it.
Yeah.
So much of it is really driven by the brain's perception, and I think the brain controls the entire human body, everything from soup to nuts, head to toes, and everything in between. Every automatic function, digestion, breath, you name it, vascular, body temperature control.
Yeah. Well, if you think, like, when's the last time you cut yourself and consciously healed the wound? It doesn't happen, right? It's
We
a
didn't have to.
subconscious
No, you
process,
basically wash it out, bandage it, and leave it alone.
and it does its thing. So I don't think it's too hard when you look at that very small example. Or when's the last time you fought into existence needing to go to the toilet? Like, the body does that. It knows when to do it. We've assimilated all the nutrients out of the food, and now we're going to do our thing. So on that basis, it's not too much of a stretch to believe that the mind can actually cause a symptom as
I
well
agree.
as
Yeah, symptoms, in my opinion, are a response to the danger. Symptoms, in my opinion, are simply warning signals. Warning signals, period. That's what it is. You ever touch a hot stove by accident? Yeah. And what do? Ow! And you look at your finger and you're not even burnt. So why did it hurt? The brain was warning you. You're standing in front of the stove, you touch, you feel like you're touching some metal. There's a certain sensory of heat, and your brain goes, hey, get your hand off. Pain's on. The minute you take your hand away, where's the pain? It's already gone.
Yeah.
Pain is a warning signal. Unfortunately, with fear and attention, it can get stuck on. That false alarm can sound and stay on for days, weeks, months, years, decades. But with the correct information as to what actually is at the root cause of it, and with enough messages of safety to create a credible wealth of safety that outweighs the brain's false perception of danger, symptoms go away. And you've experienced that with your story. You've had plenty of cases where maybe accidentally, before you heard about this Sarno TMS thing, and a couple other times with some intention and awareness and knowledge, you were able to overcome a number of symptoms.
Well, I can tell you of one very obvious one, actually. When I first had vertigo, the guy lives behind me is an osteopath, and it was during the first time I had it was when I had this vaccine years and years ago. When it come back was during the first lockdown, and I was working from home, and I saw the osteopath, and I said, I've been getting this vertigo, and he said, I've actually had like an increase in patients who are getting the same thing. He's blamed it on working from home, sitting on the kitchen table, typing away. And he said it's probably in your neck. And I don't doubt it's something to do with the neck, but I don't think it's what he's saying now. So anyway, he's done all these maneuvers on me, and he triggered the vertigo, or that situation triggered the vertigo, and it come back the next day. I woke up the next day and I was, back in the hole again. And he mentioned it was this side of my neck, and then all of a sudden I had chronic neck pain, and it was ridiculous for about 10 months constantly. We had to go out and buy all these new pillows and all this kind of stuff. This was before I got into this topic. And it was horrible. I couldn't drive for long periods of time without it hurting. I'd sit there and I'd move my neck and it was like stiff and it would jolt. And I started to manifest this thing. And when I figured out the Sarno stuff, it just went away and I've never had it again. But I've had vertigo again since.
Yeah.
So it's like I just created this thing out of nowhere, bought pillows, like we went on this whole journey, and it was never actually a thing.
It was never your neck, but for a while you believed it was.
Yeah.
And if the brain perceives that you've got a neck problem, you know what it's going to do when you try to turn your neck in the car? It's going to hurt. It's going to tighten it up. Stiffness is just the brain protecting us by making it tight so we can't turn our neck too far.
Yeah.
Right? Tension is a protective mechanism. And I walked like a robot for like most of my pain journey because my brain was saying, keep that back safe, tighten it up. Don't move too loosely. You're going to hurt it. Even though I knew about Sarno, I was still guarded, protected, very rigid.
It's hard to believe to the level that you need to believe it for you to kind of overcome, your issues. It's hard to get there from, a standing start. It takes a long period of time. And I found it to going back over things again and again and again. And every time you just become a little bit more sure. So you must see that in your clients as well. It might take some time to overcome these things.
Yeah, and there's certain people that come into my world terrified, absolutely terrified. And you can tell them the same thing. Nope, you're going to be fine. Your body's okay. But the symptom feels like this. The symptom feels like this. Symptom feels like this. And every time I do this, the symptom. I'm like, yeah, I know, but over here, that's because your brain is terrified, concerned that you've got this body problem. And it takes those people longer, but the knowledge alone isn't enough. You could read a TMS book and go, yeah, it makes sense. I see myself on the pages, but that's not curative. You actually have to convince the brain that the thing it's perceiving as dangerous is not actually dangerous. And that's where it takes the time. And it takes consistency too, because, I joke, nobody ever got better by freaking out, right? When you are in a panic, all you're doing is confirming with the brain, I am in trouble. There is a problem. I'm in danger.
Yeah.
That's, calm reassurance, indifference even of like, I know it's there, whatever. I don't care if I hurt. I don't care if the room's spinning. I know what's going on. It's going to pass. I'm just going to chill for a day or two.
Do you talk to yourself as well? Do you say, I know what you're doing, you're trying to help, but, do you kind of go to that level, or do you just have that complete indifference?
No, I don't have those levels of conversations anymore. I mean, I'd probably say half a dozen times in the past 14 years, I've had some back pain. It's never lasted more than a week. Never. Doesn't become chronic. Why? I know what it is. I connect the dots. Yeah, something stressful is going on in my life. I got it. It makes sense. And I shift my attention away from the symptoms and go, that'll take care of itself. What was I doing again? I get back into my day, into my life, into my work. And I just trust that my body didn't get injured in any way, shape, or form. So with zero fear, zero attention, it's got no fuel to keep on going. So
would you recommend people who are in fear to do that,
I do coach people on, you want to get from freak out to freak out less, to start to calmly reassure yourself, to, start to create safety proactively. And I did a video, I don't know, 5-6 weeks ago, how to talk to your brain to end your pain. It's like, all right, brain, come on, we're going to get on board here. Dan's not concerned about this. I don't know why you are, but I'm not concerned. It's not just telling your brain you're okay, because otherwise people would walk around going, I'm safe, and pain would disappear. It's got to be authentic. And I like using more words than less. And it's like, come on, brain, let's work together. You know that there was no injury. This is just you perceiving danger, but me having a fight with my sister-in-law is not really dangerous enough to cause symptoms. So I'm going to start moving my body more So work with me. And I know you might turn up the symptoms if I start working out or moving my body more, but I'm going to keep on doing it. And you're going to see I'm actually okay. So I like the concept of show and tell. You want to show the brain that you're okay by thinking, acting, and behaving as if you're actually okay.
Yeah.
Now, in the case of a wicked vertigo spell, the room's spinning. You're not going to be able to show the brain you're okay by hopping in the car and driving down the road. There are
Can't
times,
even down the stairs, let alone.
yeah, I mean, there are times when being prudent and smart makes sense. So
Yeah.
do the right thing in those cases. But,
I clear my schedule and
Mhm.
I enjoy my time in bed.
Yeah.
That's sort of where I got with the last time. I actually had 3 well-deserved days of self-care rather than self-sabotage.
But while you're laying in bed, make sure you're not worrying, catastrophically thinking, oh no, I'm never going to get rid of this vertigo. No, just remind yourself, a very temporary thing.
Yeah.
Brain just fired this up. I'm going to be good. And this is not a big deal. Safety, even if you're laying in bed, because just laying in bed terrified is not really going to help you teach the brain much.
No. So one thing I wanted to talk about and get your view on as well is this idea of stress, right?
Mhm.
So you've got stress is a weird thing. You've got very obvious stress, right? You're at work, you're trying to hit your sales quota. You've just, a deal you've done's just cancelled and you're already behind. I think people assume that is the stress that we're talking about, but it can go a lot deeper as well. And a lot of the time you're stressed maybe without even knowing it. And it's more of a suppressed subconscious level of stress, potentially like my situation right now with the wedding. I say to people like, oh, is it stressful? I'm like, it's very stressful. And they're like, but why are you stressed? And it's like, no, it's not stressful like that. Everything's in order. It's fine. I'm not worried. It's the analogy I said of, have I locked the door? Is the oven off? There's so many things going on in the background. So I'm finding myself more tense, more uptight. And I can't really point to exactly what's caused it specifically. It's just a barrage of things that are going on in the background. So you've got that level as well. But then also it can go even deeper, and maybe you've got someone who had a traumatic childhood and they've been carrying it for 20 years. And it's almost like, why now? Why has this thing started to come to the surface now? And I guess it can be simple things or certain, like we said, demographics, like a certain age group where this one little thing has now, the straw that broke the camel's back almost, is one little thing has added to that and then it's just like exploded. So I guess bringing it back to the question that I forgot now, the kind of level of stress, do you mind sort of trying to, I don't know, just go into that, because people do assume I'm not stressed. I don't have anything stressful going on, but it can be a lot deeper than that, maybe even from childhood.
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, for a wedding, for example, you may have everything lined up, buttons down, all the planning is done, guest lists, invitations, everything is done. But subconsciously, it's like, am I going to be a good husband? Is she going to be a good wife? Are we going to get along? If you either had parents that split up at a certain age, are we going to split up? Are we going to make it? Are we going to be, 90 years old and still holding hands at the nursing home, or are we going to split up in 2 years? We don't know. And there's all of these concerns. Society, it's ripe with divorce and all that stuff. And I'm not saying any of this to scare you. I'm just saying that subconsciously, there's all those subconscious fears like, I hope this goes well, right? And so some that could be coming up from childhood, traumatic childhood. Hey, maybe, am I going to be a good father? Am I going to have some kids? And am I going to yell at my kid like my dad yelled at me? Oh, no, I don't want to do that. And a lot of this stuff percolates underneath the surface. And as you get closer and closer, there's the pressure of, am I making the right decision? Should I do this? Is this going to work out well? Right? And so I think it's just the brain doing its job saying, are you sure? Are you really sure? And it's your job consciously to say, yeah, I'm sure. We're good. I got this. This is what I want. This person is my person. This is who I want to spend the rest of my life with. And, you can quell some of those subconscious thoughts, but some of it might just come up from a neighborhood, growing up as a kid and going, yeah, Billy's parents divorced and his life was really difficult. Okay. So who knows what could be bubbling up that would cause it. And here's the point. As it relates to perceived danger, creating pain or symptoms, we can spend an awful lot of time trying to figure out, well, what caused it? What did it? How come? How come? How come? Why? Doesn't matter. You know why? Because let's say you figure it out. Let's say you figured out it was some third grade story where your neighbor's parents split up and the kid was devastated. Okay. And now you got a subconscious thought coming up now a month before your wedding. What do you do with that? What's the solution?
Well, I guess.
Great, thanks. I found out a possible, not a certain, but a possible explanation. I don't encourage people to dig for the reason why symptoms started in the first place, or why they may have increased recently, or why you may have gotten a new symptom. I say, all right, just assume there's one answer to that question. The brain is perceiving danger. So what do? I don't have to figure it out. Let me go right towards reassuring myself that there's no problem. Jump right to creating that safety and knowing this is not a big deal. My body's fine. Hey, brain, I know you're flipping out. There's a lot of stuff going on surrounding marriages. I hope the two families get along and there's no fighting in the church or anything like that, right?
I know.
Right. So, there's all sorts of stuff going on, but you don't have to figure it out. Jump right to safety. Say, I'm good. Brain, no reason for symptoms. We can turn that off. I'm not concerned about my body at all. I know these are false alarms. You're just trying to warn me about some perceived danger. Don't need to know what it is. If it's obvious, great. Make a note. Some people are like, oh my goodness, I had a fight with my mom. Instantly, symptoms flared. Okay, got it. What do you do with that? Does that mean you never talk to mom again? No, not, of course not. Just connects the dots so you can go, yeah, absolutely, this is TMS, perceived danger, creating the symptoms. That's all. And then you move on and start focusing on how can I create compelling evidence of safety, hopefully to outweigh the brain's false perception of danger.
Yeah.
And if you keep it at the danger safety level, all the complexities of this whole entire TMS world fall away to the wayside because it doesn't have to be complex.
Yeah. This sounds very much like something that you've crafted along the way, because you do a lot of videos on a topic and you really just simplify it. And that's how I perceive your messages. Simple, safety. When people are in the heat of battle, they want to hear that and they find a lot of comfort in that. But I feel that people kind of need to, I don't know if it's a societal thing. I don't know, but I feel like people need to know they've worked hard. do you get what I mean? So you must find a lot of your time is spent on just go back to the basics, because people like to work hard for things, and they don't like things that are that simple.
Well, exactly. And I've actually had people, one of the recent people who joined my group program was a member about 1.5 years ago. And she left
and come back.
They left because they were like, it can't be that simple.
Yeah.
And then they went and they joined some brain rewiring program that was like 2 hours a day worth of exercises and brain training and all this stuff. And then that never got them anywhere. And there's other people who have gone and, all right, I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to go do journaling. I'm going to go do a meditation retreat. I'm going to do breath work for 1 hour a day, and also all these things. They got a checklist of 15 items that they have to do every day to get better. And they come back to me and they go, none of that stuff worked.
Yeah.
And they come back to the simplicity of, it doesn't have to be complex. If the perception of danger is creating the problem, and it might be any number of a dozen things, doesn't matter. How can I convey safety to myself and my scared, overprotected brain now in the moment? Well, don't tell myself the story that this is never going to get better, because that's just perpetuating the fear. Don't tell yourself the story, well, maybe it had to do with that accident 14 years ago. Don't tell yourself the story that, I had this medical treatment and it went wrong and now I've got this problem. I mean, all those stories will perpetuate the fear, the perception of danger, and the symptom. But if you've done the assessments and you understand how it works, then you can look back and go, has nothing to do with that stuff.
Yeah. Do you know what people
it's just sounding an alarm, and it's a false alarm.
I think that's kind of the essence of like narrative of life is have you ever read the book The Alchemist?
I'm familiar with it. I don't know if I've read it anytime recently.
Essentially, he's gone on embarked on a journey to find the hidden treasure, which was always planted on his doorstep. So, but you'd never appreciate what's right in front of you until you go on this journey. You go, do you know what I mean? So I know you're wanting to give them the truth, but sometimes, actually nearly all the time, people have to find it themselves. They have to do that. As long as they come back to what's, but then you might actually have clients that just get it. They trust you, they believe it, and it's just that easy, and that's it. So I don't know if it's we do it to ourselves, if it is a societal thing, or if it's hardwired in the matrix, the system we live in. I don't know, but we do like a story and a journey.
Well, I think what we're doing in this world, my world, where it's like, let's simplify this. You've got chronic pain for 10 years. Here's what's going on. The brain is perceiving danger and it's been keeping it going for all these years. People can kind of create their own fears. What if I'm not good enough to do this? What if I can't implement this stuff? I'm too scared. Pain's been here for too long. Pain's too intense, right? I've always been anxious my whole life. And how am I supposed to get better? How am I supposed to reduce the fear when I've been anxious my whole life? And they've got all these stories why they can't implement something as simple as teach your brain you're okay. So sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And yes, there is a journey there. I tell people all the time, I can't do it for you. All I can do is point at the guideposts and say, turn left here, turn right there. This is what you do. Stay on the main road. Don't go off into the dirt roads through the jungle, right? And everybody's got to find their way through this. And it's incredible to see the realizations. But at a certain point in time, everybody who gets better has that moment where they go, I still have symptoms, but I don't care anymore. I authentically don't care. And they got this big smile on their face and they're saying, I really don't care because I know I'm not broken. Like, holy shit, I'm really not broken. That aha moment. And when they have that, I'm like, they're getting close, right? Problem is, next time the symptoms flare, that aha moment goes out the window and then they got to find it again. And, it is absolutely a journey. But it's a journey that not just helps eliminate chronic symptoms, but also helps people find out who they are, what they're made of, what matters, setting boundaries with other people. People just say, at the end of their journey, they're going, I would have never, ever thought I'd say this during the journey, because it can be brutal, right? You know it personally. It can be brutal. But a lot of people, once they're through it, they go, wow, what a gift this was. I'm such a different person now than I was before.
Yeah. But it's interesting you just said that, because I've had quite a few of my guests. They come at it from a different angle, but they come to the same conclusion that you just had. It is a gift.
Yeah.
And I just interviewed Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. She done the GAPS diet, the GAPS protocol. And I kind of got under the hood in the conversation. I got into her her spiritual beliefs. She's a very spiritual woman. She's very, comes from a scientific background. She was a neuroscientist, a neurologist, and she's gone on a spiritual journey, and she sort of alluded to these symptoms or these health problems are, they will take you on a journey, a spiritual journey of self-discovery. And that was actually going to be my next question. I'm imagining, because now you know how powerful the mind is, I'm imagining that it has opened you up spiritually over the years of you doing this, and maybe adding to it every time you see, new cases and people overcoming such devastating, in some regards, such devastating problems and symptoms, as you say. So has it connected you spiritually? Has it sent you on this journey, and are you watching other people doing the same thing?
I don't know how deep I get into connecting with spirituality. I'm a spiritual person. I'm a believer in God, but I wasn't necessarily when I went through my journey with pain. I was very agnostic, didn't know what to believe. It was like, I don't disbelieve, but I don't believe. It's like, I think there is, but I don't know, right? And so I was able to get better without that spiritual piece. The more folks I help, I get so much positive confirmation that what I am teaching in the simple way that I teach it is helping people at such a deep level that I feel closer to spirit. Like I just feel like I'm doing God's work. And people tell me that all the time. And even though I don't quote scripture, I don't quote the Bible, I don't preach God in any of my videos, people are saying what you are teaching is right out of scripture, and I don't even know the scripture, right? I don't know that. So I'm humbled by those types of statements. When somebody says you're doing God's work, I'm so, holy crap. Like that's huge, right? But I don't know that I really go about it from a spiritual standpoint. And, I'm writing a book now, and I think it's important for us to create safety emotionally, mentally, physically, for sure, because these are three ways that we experience the world. Whether you're a year old or 99 years old, you experience the world emotionally, physically, mentally, right? And then I was thinking spiritually, and I'm thinking, I don't know how to connect that, right? I'm not a spiritual, I don't study scripture. I don't study the Bible. I don't know how to explain it. And really where I turned it to is, how do you view and treat yourself? Are you beating yourself up? Are you judging yourself, criticizing yourself? Are you treating yourself with compassion, kindness, and love? And I kind of see that as a little bit more of the spiritual side of it.
Yeah, that's what I was actually referring to be honest. Not so much like, religion, more an inner connected, I don't know, connecting to something that it's inside, but
self.
big. Yeah, like the subconscious is connected to something that's bigger, and you're finding it through that inner refuge, through meditation, through walks in the woods, through conversations where you're just listening and it's connecting on a deeper level. That's, I guess, what I was sort of referring to in that sense. So yeah, I think similar view on that one, I'd say.
I'm so blessed because I get to interact with all these people in the group coaching programs, and people are sharing progress and wins and successes in the beginning of these, group calls. And there's so many times where we're like, half the Zoom call is full of happy tears for the person, for what they're realizing and achieving and getting their life back. People have gone from years of bed rest to living their life and running charities and flying around the world and doing all sorts of stuff, from being bedbound. People who did not want to be on the planet are now out living large.
Yeah.
And so the impact of this work is unimaginable. It's available to everybody. So if any of your audience is sitting there listening saying, I don't know, that might work for somebody, but I don't know about me. I'm too anxious. I'm too this. I got too much trauma from childhood. No, Because I can guarantee if you listen to the success stories that I've posted, so many of these people were very broken at one point, very broken. And they figured out a way that through this simple, conveying safety to themselves and teaching their brain we're really not in danger. The physical symptoms can lift, but even better is the mental health stuff, the anxieties, the depressions, the PTSDs, the OCDs. These things can lift. Why? Because a brain that feels safe works a hell of a lot better than a brain that's terrified and believes you're messed up. It's such a simple solution. Safety, period. Mentally, emotionally, physically. How do you treat yourself? How do you respond to symptoms? Shift your attention to living instead of fixing because you're not broken. It's so simple. Hard. It's not easy. It's really, really tough.
It's a mind game as well a lot of the time.
It is, of course.
It's like a Jedi mind trick.
And I'm the guy who says this stuff is really hard. I get it. It's really hard because I've not only lived it, but I've also coached a bunch of people through it. So I know how hard it is, but it is simple in concept. And so I try to simplify the process so that it's accessible to more and more people. So I'm blessed. I love what I do.
I think just looking at your journey is testament to what you've just said, really. You started with back pain.
Mm-hmm.
Which you're saying was caused by not feeling like you wasn't where you wanted to be. And that back pain has now led you to where you were meant to be.
Oh, yeah.
In that, I mean, that's quite profound, really, when you think about it from that perspective. So.
Oh, this is definitely my calling. I was made to do this in the past 25 years of living it, studying it, and now teaching it has led me to right where I am, which is where I can help countless people actually around the globe.
It's led you to this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to share it with your viewers and with you. And anything else?
No, I think that's a beautiful place to leave it, actually.
All right.
Really good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Jay, I appreciate you. Thank you for inviting me onto the podcast. And if I can ever do anything for you, you reach out.
Thank you.
All right, man.
Right, I've pressed